So session 3 of Around the Table, and today I'm going to look at the Passover. Now the story of their last night in Egypt we read in Exodus 12. It begins with instructions from God that the month they were in was to be the first month of the year. So it really signifies a new beginning. They were told to roast a lamb. They were to bake bread without yeast, so it could be baked quickly. They were to paint the blood of the lamb on their doorpost and not to leave any of the meat until morning. And then they needed to be dressed, ready to go. And that night, of course, the angel of death passed over, and the firstborn of every Egyptian died, but passed over the houses of the Hebrews. When they finally entered the promised land, then they celebrated the Passover feast, remembering what God had done for them. They were his people. And the feast developed a ritual whereby they would tell the story of how they were slaves in Egypt, but God rescued them. This was a way of each person becoming a part of the story, even though they hadn't physically been there. They were a part of the story and saying, this is who I am, this is my story. They were told to do this to commemorate what God had done. Now, our word for remember isn't as strong as the Hebrew one. The Hebrew word for remember says, allow this memory, focus on it and allow it to actually shape you. So it was more than just the mind saying, oh yeah, I remember. It was letting the meaning sink in and shape you. And we said before that the ritual was based on those 4 promises God had given them when he took them out of Egypt. Each of these promises in the Passover meal is marked by a cup of wine. Not necessarily 4 different cups, but at 4 different times they drink a cup of wine. The first one is remembering that promise of God, I will take you out of Egypt. So this is a cup of thanksgiving. This is the cup Luke mentions when he says at the beginning of the meal, Jesus gave thanks, and then he said to his disciples to share it, although he himself did not drink it. The second cup remembered that God had changed their mindset from being slaves to being his own people, and they called this the cup of memory. Remember how God changed us. Having drunk this cup, they would then dip a piece of bread into bitter herbs, remembering their time of slavery. And then they ate the main meal. After the meal, there was the third cup, which was the promise, I will redeem you. So this was called the cup of redemption, remembering God's promise. This is the cup that Luke refers to when he says, in the same way, after supper, he took the cup reminding them of God's redemption. But Jesus showed them that this was now a new covenant with God, which would be sealed in his blood, not the blood of animals, his own. The fourth cup that they drank at the end of the meal was for God to guide and protect them. So it was seen drinking this cup was putting themselves under God's protection. Now there was a fifth cup which they didn't drink, but it's one that Jeremiah refers to in chapter 25. It says, take from my hand this cup filled with the wine of my wrath, and make all the nations to whom I send you drink it. A picture of God's wrath to be poured out on the nations who were disobedient. The Jews began to see this cup as God pouring out his wrath on other nations, not necessarily themselves. And there was a disagreement, should this cup be part of the Passover? And they couldn't really decide. And so what they would do is they would leave that cup, not drink it, waiting for Elijah to come and tell them what should be done. Now I apologise to any person of Jewish origin who might think that I've just skipped over the Passover. It's a really rich and meaningful ceremony, and I've whittled it down to bare bones. But I want to see next time how this relates to our celebration of the Lord's Supper.
You are my anchor, my light and my salvation. You are my refuge, my heart will not fear. my